Good morning, Moray Rabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We continue on Masechet Succah, and we are on Daf Vav Amud Bet, 3 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zchut Refuah Shlema for Esther Bracha Bat Chaya and for Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, that should have full recovery. Refuah Shlema Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. This month's learning of the community has been graciously dedicated by the Dayan family, Shei family, Kohen family. Should be an ultimate zchut for all their mishpachot, be'ezrat Hashem, amen. So we mentioned Halacha Moshe Misinai of Shiurin, Chatzitzin, Umechetzin, Halacha Moshe Misinai, and one of which was that a sukkah could use a miniature wall as its last wall. Now we had already a machloket, how many walls you need. Machloket Chachamim and Rabbi Shimon, whether you need 3 walls or 4 walls of sukkah. But according to both of those opinions, you could have the last wall as a miniature 1 tefach wall only. So the way we paskin like Chachamim, that you need 3 walls, it would come out the famous line that everyone knows: Shnaim keilchatam ushlishit afilu tefach. 2 full walls, ushlishit afilu tefach, and the third one could be only a tefach. Now, where does the third wall stand? Where are the other 2 walls? Are we talking about walls that touch each other in a 90-degree angle? Or can it also be parallel walls on the 2 sides, and then you'll have a tefach attached to one of them? We'll see the answer to all of this. And again, if you have a wall that the sukkah, that 2 walls are attached on a 90-degree angle, then where do you put the tefach? Can it be anywhere in the middle over here, or does it have to be attached to one of the sides? Is the question of the Gemara. Ve'oto tefach hechan ma'amido, says the Gemara. That 1 tefach that you have to add, where do you put it? And the Gemara says, Amar Rav ma'amido keneged hayotze. Rav said you put it at the very end, keneged hayotze, at the end of one of those walls that you need to have as attached 90-degree angle walls. You put it at the end of one of them. So it's either going to be like this picture. It would be 2 walls here, and the third one would extend at the end here, or it would be the other way around. The 1 tefach would be either of the 2 would be fine, says Rav. So says the Gemara, the 2 top students of Rav asked a question to Rav. Now Rav Kana, we see in multiple places in Shas that he was one of the top students of Rav. He actually, in Baba Kama, Kuzayin explains how he went. He had to become a fugitive and go to Eretz Yisrael from Bavel, and the encounter that he had with Rabbi Yochanan, who was the Rosh Hashiva in Bavel, and it was clearly that Rav Kana was in a different level than all the people who were in the yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. And Rav Asi, of course, like the Gemara Ketuvot says, these are Mara de Ara de Yisrael. They were the top, Rav Ami and Rav Asi. They were the 2 twin towers of the Torah in Eretz Yisrael. So these are tremendous people, closest Talmidim of Rav perhaps. And says the Gemara, Rav Kana of Rav Asi, they asked Rav, Amri le Rav, v'yamidenu keneged rosh tur. Why can you do it keneged rosh tur? Now, rosh tur means when you would plow the land, it would be in rows of plow. And at the very end of every row, it would be a narrower line going to the side. It would be on a diagonal slanted line. So basically what they're asking him is, why don't we just put the tefach in the middle of the 2 walls? That's showing that these 2 walls are coming to a close in the middle. It would be something like this, that you have the 2 walls, And instead of having an attachment of tefach to any of the sides, it would be a diagonal line corresponding to the 90-degree angle in the middle over here. It would be in the middle of the two walls. Why don't we do it like that? This shows that it's like a little bit part of this, a little bit part of that, and it's bringing the two full walls to a close, so to speak. So Shatik Rav. Rav was quiet. Rav was quiet, which Rashi explains over here. Rashi, well, this becomes actually a machloket rishonim. For instance, the Rabbeinu Zrachya Halevi Baal HaMaor, he explains here that it's not a shtika kehoda'ah. Rav did not reckon with their suggestion. He was quiet because he completely rejected that suggestion. And the Ritba even over here says that, well, me and you would read this and we would think Shatik means that he agreed with them. He didn't have much to argue with it, right? Especially bearing in mind that Rav was a very respectful person. These are big Talmidei Chachamim, as top students. He would say something if he had something to say against it. But says the Ritba, you see from the continuation of the Gemara, the way the Shita of Shmuel is brought, that really Rav did not agree with this. It's not an understanding that is viable halachically, so he basically stuck to his guns, that it means either of the two walls at the end have an attachment, which is the first picture that we have up here, and that's what. So, why is it that he wouldn't say anything? One could say because Rav, if you take a look, really, the Rabbi Akiva Eiger in Gilyon HaShas on the bottom of your Gemarot, you have the Gilyon HaShas, and he gives you a handful of other examples of this that Rav would keep quiet, right? Rav would keep quiet. If you take a look, it says Kenze, it's in Betzah Daf Vav and Daf Lamed Zayin, and you have it in Baba Kama, Daf Yud Aleph, and Baba Metzia Daf Samech Tet. This is something that you find Rav doing, and is very much aligned with Asar Mili de Chasidut de Rav. We have spoken about this multiple times. That Rav was a very measured person. Every action, every gesture was completely methodically thought through. One of the things that Rav had that none of his students afterwards, even though despite the fact that they tried to, after his passing, his students tried to emulate at least one of the 10 Mili de Chasidut de Rav. So Rav Sheshat and Rav Yosef tried to emulate his Shmirat Einayim. Amru al Rav, they said that Rav never in his adult life looked over 4 amot of where he was walking unless deliberately decided so. He had such control and Shmirat Einayim. And the other thing is, what the Rambam actually brings this in the second perek of Hilchot Deot, he said, Amru al Rav Talmid Rabbeinu HaKadosh. They said about Rav, the Talmid, the student of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Shemiyamav lo sach sicha betela. That never in his life spoke an idle talk, an extra word. Every conversation, every word, every sentence was very much measured by him. One of the greatest level of the generations of Amoraim. We all know that Rav Tanahu Upalik, Rav was considered Tana, even though that he lived in the generation of Amoraim, but he was considered the cream of the crop, the top level of the Amoraim. So therefore, he was even careful, not even when he did not necessarily agree with something. Some people, they have to make sure that you know that they disagree with you, right? I had a chavruta, a friend, that when he didn't agree with something, he would never say, I disagree. You never could get that word out of his mouth. He would say, I'm not sure if I agree, right? It's a different way of saying it, but it changes completely the vibe, So, some lesson for Shalom Bayit. It's a very, very helpful tip, but nevertheless, Rav was already a different madrega, right? He didn't, if he didn't have what to say, Shatik Rav, he would keep quiet. There are others who say, because Ramami Pano, right? Menachem Azaria Mipano, in Or Yael, he writes that he was, of course, one of the Gdolei Mekubalim in Italia. He writes that, and this is brought, again, if you take a look at Seder Adorot and others, there is an understanding that Rav, whose name actually was Abba, Rav was just his title, just like Rabbeinu HaKadosh, we call him Rebbe, right? Call him Rebbe because he was the rabbi, right? In Eretz Yisrael, whoever had Smicha in Eretz Yisrael was called Rebbe, whoever was in Bavel was called Rav, right? That's the difference, by the way, in the Gemara. Consistently, when you see Rav Yehuda is because he was in Bavel, right? Rabbi Yochanan is because he was in Eretz Yisrael, and that is consistent. Rav Yossi, right? Rav Asi, Rav Ami, because all where that's the. So says Rama Mipano that this Rav, who was the rabbi of Bavel, he was really the same Rav Abba that's mentioned in Zohar HaKadosh, the student of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and he was actually the scribe of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, one of the Gdolei Mekubalim of the era of Tanaim. According to Seder Adorot, if you add up, he lived over 200 years, a very, very blessed life, closer to 3. And if you do the cheshbon, and if this is that, says Rama Mipano, whenever it says Shatik Rav in Gemara, which we already have 5 examples, it's not that he just kept quiet. It means he had what to say, but he didn't say it. Right? You only could say someone kept quiet when they had something to say. When you have nothing to say, keeping quiet doesn't really, that's shtika koda, right? But shatik rav means he had what to say. But it was a Kabbalistic understanding of deeper levels, and he didn't say it because it was not a discussion, it was a discussion of halakha, and he didn't want to involve different levels of understanding with that, so hence shatik rav. But be that as it may, Rav Asi and Rav Kana, they had this Resh Tura suggestion that we should do it like this, and Rav did not agree with it. The way we are understanding from the Baal Mor, from the Ritba, he disagreed with that. So says the Gemara, take a look. Now this comes to reiterate what the Ritba said. I mean, we just mentioned it a moment ago. Amar Shmuel, right, the counterpart of Rav and Shmuel. So Shmuel says, Mishmed Levi, Ma'amido keneged hayotze. He also said that you do it at the very end of one of the walls, like the first top picture that we have over here, like Rav had said. So Rav and Shmuel, both of them agree that you do the 2 90-degree walls, full walls, and one of them would be extended with another 90 degree for 1 tefach only, short, small, miniature wall. So says the Gemara, and that is the halakha that we paskin in the Bet Midrash. Says the Gemara, Ma'amido keneged hayotze, that you put it as a third wall attached to one of the other 2 full walls that are touching each other. So says the Gemara, Rab Simon veitema Rab Yoshua ben Levi Amar, Oselo tefach sochek uma'amido bepachot mishlosha tfachim samuch ledofan. Says no. The way you do it is the following. You got it all wrong. Shlishit afiru tefach is the minimum creative wall that could resemble the 7 tfachim minimum amount of the wall of Sukkah is 7 tfachim, right? We mentioned the smallest size of a kosher Sukkah is 7 by 7 tfachim, right? Now, what's the most creative way of creating a 7 tfachim wall to be considered the imaginary third wall of the Sukkah? In other words, you have 2, but third one has to also be a wall. It has to resemble at least the minimum amount of wall, which is 7. So how can you do that in the most creative way? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you how you could do that. Says Rabbi Shlomo ben Levi, you do 1 tefach, but not just the regular tefach. You do a tefach sochek, right? There is such a shita that all the tefachim, we spoke in the previous daf, that you have a 5 tefachim amma, you have a 6 tefachim amma, right? There's a shita, as such that all the tfachim that we speak about are six tfachim. The difference is if it's tefach sochek or tefach atziv. Now, what is a tefach, by the way? Tefach is 4 fingers of agudal, 4 thumbs next to each other. Right? Agudal is the thickest, the widest of the fingers, and you have 4 of those attached to each other. That constitutes a shiur tefach. Right? In a halachic way, we have the discussion between the poskim, and the majority of the poskim is known as the shita of Hagrach Naeh, Rab Chaim Naeh, is 8 centimeters, and Chazon Ish famously disagreed, and he felt the tefach is 10 centimeters. So for Deoraitas, we try to be more mindful. Therefore, a height of a wall of Sukkah, you want it to be minimum a meter, which is 10 tfachim of 10 centimeters each, will be 1 meter, and so on and so forth. But that could be tefach atzev, that you push them together. Or you could do tefach sochek, right? Imagine it's like the lips, the Rishonim, the way they say, if a person is sad, the lips are attached together, pushed like this. If a person is smiling, sochek, then the lips open up. It would be like you have a mashehu of avir, mashehu of air between the two. So if you put 4 of those next to each other, you'll end up with a slightly bigger tefach. You'll see in just a moment why you need a tefach sochek over here. But says Rabbi Shimon Levi, you put a tefach sochek, which is slightly bigger than a tefach, and you put it, if you could see this picture over here, you put it over here less than 3 tfachim, a mashehu less than 3 tfachim, away from the edge of the wall. Now mashehu, a little tiny bit less than 3 tfachim, plus a tefach ane mashehu, right? We said this wall is a little bit more than a tefach, because tefach sochek would add up to how much? 4 sufficient, right? 4 tfachim, and because this is lavud, we just learned about lavud two shiurim ago, right? Lavud means anything less than 3 tfachim is considered attached. So the halacha would see this as being attached completely to the wall, so you have a wall of 4 tfachim, right? And a wall of 4 tfachim, you will have the majority of 7 tfachim requirement of the minimum wall, and then you're good to go, right? So now you see, the Gemara takes this to the next step. So it says, Rabbi Shlomo Levi said, Oselo, this is one version of saying the shita of Rabbi Shlomo Levi. You place it less than 3 tfachim away from the edge of the wall. Samuch ledofan, v'chol pachot mishlosha samuch ledofan kelavudam. It becomes like lavud. Hence, you have a wall of 4 tfachim, right? And if you take a quick look at Rashi says, "Upachot migimel kelavud ve'haviale kemechitza shel dalet." It will be like a wall of 4 tfachim, right? 1 and mashehu plus mashehu less than 3 is 4, and therefore says the Gemara, "Umeshech sukkah shiv'ah." The length of a minimum kosher sukkah is 7 tfachim. Nimtza ruvo shel dofan asui. You have majority of wall, and that is sufficient. The Gemara says, "Amar Yehuda, sukkah aseh maboy." If you have a sukkah that is not a 90-degree attachment of the 2 walls, like all the pictures that we have over here, but it's like a street, it's like an alleyway, that's the 2 walls that you have, right? Imagine a driveway that has walls of a house and wall of the fence on the 2 sides. Can you use that and let's say have a trellis on top, and then you have a pergola type of thing, and now you have schach on top of it? Can that be the 2 walls and then shlishit afilu tefach? Says the Gemara, no, you can't have that. Says the Gemara, the way you could do, it is kasher, right? You could make a sukkah like that. Sukkah asya kemaboy is keshera, Ve'oto tefach ma'amido lechol ruach sheyirtze. You could put the one tefach that kosherizes the sukkah anywhere you want. Says the Gemara. Rab Simon ve'itma Rabbi Yosha ben Levi amar. Rabbi Yosha ben Levi says no, you can't just put a tefach wherever you want, right? You have to have a whole setup over here, which makes the sukkah kasher. Says the Gemara, says Rabbi Yosha ben Levi, Oselo pas arba u'mashu ma'amido bepachot mishlosha samuch ledofan. You have to have a wall that is 4 tfachim plus, a little bit more than 4 tfachim. So you have a wall like this, and you leave it not attached to the wall, but less than 3 tfachim away from this. So this board that you put here is 4 tfachim plus, away from the wall less than 3 tfachim. So the subtotal of this whole area will be 7 tfachim wide, and that is a minimum amount of the wall of requirement of wall of sukkah, and that is kasher. So wait a second. Rabbi Yosha ben Levi just a moment ago said that you could have 1 tefach over here standing less than 3 tefachim. Why do you all of a sudden need 4 tefachim plus instead of 1 tefach plus? Right? Remember, both of these are Rabbi Yosha ben Levi, right? So why all of a sudden here you need 1 plus and over here you need 4 plus? Says the Gemara. וכל פחות מ3 סמוך לדופן כלעבוד דמי, and the Gemara asks, מה ישנה התם דקאמרת סגיה טפח שוחק? What's the difference that here you said tefach sochek, which is a tefach plus, would be sufficient? Umay shenahacha the ka'amrat baya pas arban. Over here, all of a sudden you say you need 4 plus for it to be kasher. Mara says that's very simple, because hatam deikashtet fanot kirchatan. Over here you have 2 attached walls. It very much creates a homey, enclosed situation. And therefore, with a little bit is enough. You have a majority of wall altogether, which again, 1 plus 3 would be 4. That's majority of wall, as Rashi explained, and that's sufficient. But over here, you have like a mefulash. It's like a street. You're literally walking inside the alley. It doesn't resemble a housing situation, so you need more of the 7 tfachim wall over here. Because here you don't have 2 attached walls, you have 2 parallel walls. If you don't have a full 7 tfachim, it would not be sufficient, and this gives you a full 7 tfachim, because again, lavud is considered closed, so you have actually a 7 tfachim wide wall attached, and that would be sufficient. So says the Gemara, Amar Rava. Now Rava is going to say the 3 different versions of Rava, and we'll see how this comes into play really with the halacha l'maaseh. Amar Rava ve'ena niteret ela besurat hapetach. We're back. We're out of this situation and this situation. We're back to our regular case, right? Says Rava, this 1 tefach that you have to have, you need a surat hapetach, which means, take a good look at this. Rava says the 1 tefach that you need over here, now imagine you don't have this, because we're going with 1 of them. You have half a tefach over here, half a tefach over here, right? This is half a tefach, this is half a tefach, right? You have a beam that's half a tefach attached to the wall, and another beam completely on the other side, which is half a tefach also. These are your vertical beams going up, and then you have a horizontal column on top, making a surat hapetach. That horizontal could be as thin as you want, but you have a frame basically. It's like you have the 2 doorposts and the lintel on top, and that would be your surat hapetach, a frame of a door. That is what's considered a tefach that works as a wall. You think you just put a tefach there and it's considered a wall? No way. You have half a tefach here, half a tefach on the other side, and above them, creating the actual wall would be not a wall, but a surat petach. And surat petach is considered a wall in halacha, in Chod Shabbat, Eruvin, all over Shas is considered a wall. So that's Rava. That's one version of Rava. There are those who say, Amar Rava v'niteret nami besurat petach. No, that's not what Rava said. Rava is not disagreeing with if this wall would be a tefach, what we said originally, the first minute of the shiur, right? This would be good. You have two full walls, and attached to the second wall, you have one tefach, beam, wall, that's kasher. But says Rava, there is another alternative way to do it. You know what's the alternative? If you have two beams, not half a tefach, any thickness, any two vertical beams that you have here, and then you have a horizontal beam going across, right? Which creates the surat petach, acting as the lintel of the doorway, and that's good to go, right? So says the Gemara, Ika de Amri, that's the second one. The third way of saying Rava is, Amar Rava, v'sericha nami surat petach, right? Not that it could be either or, but you need a tefach and you also need a surat petach. That means you have, here, in this third picture that we have, you have a tefach here, right? Tefach sochek, as we'll see, that's how the Gemara understands it. And then you put another little beam here. Doesn't have to be a tefach. Column. Right? You have another column there, and you have a surat petach, a beam going across horizontally from this column to this post, which was a tefach plus, right? And that's what it means. You need the tefach, right? Creating this wall over here, but you also need the imaginary wall, which is created by the surat petach, the frame of a doorway, which will complete the wall. That's the third way that Rava said it. Let's just finish until the two dots over here. Says the Gemara story. Rav Ashi Ashkeche Rav Kana, the author of the Gemara, Rav Ashi himself, he found his friend that was making, Rav Kana was making actually tefach sochek, right? Now Rav Ashi is the last generation of Amoraim. We just mentioned that Rav Kana, that we mentioned in the last page, is really this maximum, the second generation of Amoraim, right? Talmid of Rav. So if you take a look, actually, it said, I don't know, there's 6 Rav Kanas, not necessarily the same. Rav Kana, there, at least the Tosafot actually says this in Masechet Kiddushin Daf Chet. It asks a question, because there, Rav Kana says, for me, it's talking about Pidyon HaBen, doing Pidyon HaBen, says, this shawl for me is worth 5 selaim. So it says, Gemara, you see from here that he was a Kohen. But if you take a look at Gemara in Pesachim Daf Mem Tet, there it seems that he was not Kohen, because the Gemara there says, a non-Kohen that marries a bat Kohen, if he's a Tamei Chacham, it will be very good. If he's not a Tamei Chacham, it will be very bad. And there the Gemara says, Rav Kana said, if I didn't marry this bat Kohen, my faith would be all different. And the Gemara seems to suggest clearly that he was not a Kohen himself. So Tosfot says, well, the two Rav Kanas is not the same Rav Kana. Here also it's not, for those who the Gemara raised their eyebrows, imagining that you have at least 6 generations of Amoraim, that would be a simple answer. So it says, the Gemara, Rav Ashi found Rav Kana, the Kavi Tefach Sochek. He was making this setup over here, a Tefach Sochek, and he was making a post with a beam on top. That's what he was doing. So wait a second. Lo savar more. You don't hold lehad Rava. This that Rava said. The Amar Rava v'niteret nami b'surat petach. Rava said either or. Either put a tefach over here and you're good to go, or do a surat petach and you're good to go. And Rav Kana smiled and said, no, I hold like the other Rava, the third Rava that we have, right? The 3 different ways of what codifying what Rava held. Rav Kahana said, no, I believe that Rava did not say that. I believe Rava held you have to do the tefach sochek over here with this whole business, and you have to also have, addition to that, a post with a beam on top, creating a surat petach. Amar le anake dach lishnat Rava sevirali. I hold like the other way that Rava was codified, the Amar Rava, that Rava said, V'sericha nami surat petach, that you need a tefach there, perhaps according to this, a tefach sochek, creating a minimum of 4 tefachim wall. On top of that, you also need to reach the corner by creating a beam, a post with a beam on top, creating a surat petach, and that is the way I'm going to do it. Now, tomorrow we'll see that this is actually just the beginning of, again, a fascinating thing that will end up with a lot of halachot for us. In the next shiur, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll discuss, and then we'll start talking about round sukkot and all the gazebos and very exotic sukkot that people could have in B'ezrat Hashem together. Chazak u'baruch.